Well, friends and neighbors, just about once a day now, I drive over to the Kennedy Center. It's just a short trip to see for myself whether the name of the pestilence has been removed from the building. So this is Saturday. What are we? Saturday, June 6th. And I am 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:11, and I'm heading over there for today's check. So ride with me, and on the way I will be listening to a podcast about dictators. Well, specifically now, Joseph Stalin. So let's go.
In 1903, a young man from Georgia on the edge of the Russian Empire arrives in Siberia. He's been exiled to this wintry wasteland for 3 years. It's hellish, freezing cold, food and alcohol are scarce, wolves prowl around his hut at night. The young man tries to escape on foot. He gets 40 or so miles into the 4,000-mile journey before frostbite kicks in. Bruised and defeated, he staggers back to the exile colony. The world has forgotten him. But this man is Joseph Stalin. He will become the most powerful man on the planet, one of the most feared dictators in all of history. How did he do it? Let's find out. My name is Paul McGann, and welcome to Real Dictators, the series that explores the hidden lives of tyrants such as Adolf Hitler, Chairman Mao, and Kim Jong-il. You'll be right there in their meeting rooms and private quarters, on the battlefields and in their bunkers, up close and personal with some of history's most evil leaders, watching on as they make the decisions that shape the world as we know it. We'll take you behind the curtain, beyond the propaganda and the myth-making, to hear the real stories of their totalitarian regimes. In this episode, we follow the rise of Joseph Stalin, the man of steel, from extreme poverty all the way to the Kremlin and the Cold War. This is Real Dictators.
Stalin found Russia with the wooden plough, and he left it with atomic weapons, and all prepared for the space age, in fact, which is a staggering achievement in 30 years.
Stalin's achievements were astonishing. He'd created an industrial Russia. He'd created a larger empire than any of the Tsars. He'd conquered the whole of Eastern Europe. He'd defeated Japan. He left Russia as a nuclear and industrial power and one of the two superpowers.
He wasn't a maniac. He did this calmly, in full consideration, without any hysteria. He managed the whole process and eliminated all opposition, and he did it over a longer period. He caused more death and more suffering than even Hitler. It's a close-run thing, but I think perhaps he gets the prize as the most evil thing the human race has ever produced.
In one sense, he was, probably the most successful ruler that Russia ever had. In another sense, he'd achieved this at an absolutely unacceptable price. The casualties of 20 million people, the suffering of 18 million people who went through the Gulag camps, which were hell on earth. The number of people, families destroyed. It was totally unacceptable and unnecessary.
Stalin's propaganda was extremely effective, and we have accounts of how he would work late into the night developing slogans. If Stalin had been born in the United States, he would have been a first-class advertising executive, because he really understood how to get people to buy what he's selling. He was a master at that.
It's 1917, and in the Russian capital city of Petrograd, rebellion is in the air. For 300 years, the Romanov dynasty has ruled the Russian Empire. The trauma of the First World War is weighing heavy, and there's a dire economic outlook at home. The Emperor Tsar Nicholas II has lost his grip on power. Russia is ripe for revolution. Twilight. 200 communist insurgents hurry through the back streets of the city. Among these faces, drawn from all the far reaches of Russia and its empire, is an American. John Reed came to Russia as a journalist, but since arriving, he's embraced the far-left politics of the revolution. And now, as night falls, Reed finds himself borne through the streets by the throng of Bolsheviks. The Winter Palace is a vast building set in the middle of a square. The palace is the prime target for the swarming rebels. It's the seat of government. It's everything the Bolsheviks loathed about their emperor. The palace is fabulously ornate, full of the finest European art, pieces by all the masters, carefully accumulated over hundreds of years. It has 1,500 rooms and 117 staircases. The aristocrats living here have a choice of over 1,900 windows, through which they peer down at their imperial subjects. The light of 1,000 candelabras stream out onto the square. Many of the imperial guards have deserted their posts. The doors to the palace stand wide open and unobstructed. The American, John Reed, is swept inside. Face to face, American John Reed is swept inside. Face to face with untold luxuries. The communist revolutionaries just can't help themselves. They batter open the doors and cabinets that surround them and begin looting the place for all it's worth. Glassware, fine fabrics, torn down curtains, the finest crockery litter the floor. One man passes Reed, balancing a bronze clock on his shoulder. Another man attaches a plume of ostrich feathers to his hat. Then someone cries out down the corridor, "Comrades, don't touch anything, don't take anything. This is the property of the people." Discipline returns. The loot clatters to the floor. The revolution spreads through the building. Palace servants stand about in their blue, red and gold uniforms, unsure what to do with themselves. In one room, adorned with crimson hangings, there's a long table littered with paperwork. A government meeting took place here just hours ago. Russia has been turned on its head in a moment. John Reed's story is nearing its end. He'll soon be dead of spotted typhus. But this revolution, the October Revolution, as it will be known, is only getting started. As coups go so far, this one has been almost bloodless. But now Russia will embark on 5 years of brutal civil war. And after that, 69 years of totalitarian communism. Years that will be dominated by one man. A man from the edge of the empire, short in stature but thick-set, with a wry, knowing smile, dark, piercing eyes, a bristling moustache, the epitome of alpha masculinity. Joseph Stalin. Stalin right here, in fact, in Petrograd, on this October evening in 1917. Just an hour's brisk walk across town from the Winter Palace, on the banks of the Neva River. The Palladian columns of the Smolny Institute rise into the night sky. Upstairs is a small office, the nerve center of the revolution. Vladimir Lenin, the leader, stands upright, bald head glistening with a hint of sweat, dressed in a crisp black suit, tie done up tightly around his collar.
Straight ahead is the Watergate.
In the corner, half obscured in shadow,
A very large Watergate
dressed in
complex.
grey and green, sits Stalin. The news arrives that the Winter Palace has been seized. Stalin's mustachioed face creases into a grin. His story is just beginning. The communist Bolsheviks have stormed the Winter Palace and taken over Russia. But the vanquished enemy, the Imperial Romanov family and their White Army, have no intention of going down without a fight. Under their revolutionary leader, Vladimir Lenin, the new Marxist government must fight a civil war to maintain control. The revolution still needs to be clinched on the battlefield. But ambitious Bolsheviks are keen not to miss the boat as government jobs are doled out in the capital. Among the men vying for a top position in Lenin's regime is 39-year-old.
Okay, we're approaching the Kennedy Center now. Saudi embassy is just on our right here. Let's go on over and see what we can see. Well, let's see. It looks like that fetid name is still up there. Yes, it's still there. Oh, just look at it, staining the building. This is really important to me, that this name come down, because when it does finally come down, I think I can start finally to have faith that we are on the road to restoring good order, at least in some realm of our national life, and that the shackles are finally being put on Donald Trump. There are little signs of it day by day, court rulings and such, and rebellions in his own party against his policies, but the signs are small. I want to see definitive action. I would like to see Congress get off its ass and do its job of being a proper check and balance against this madman. Anyway, that's my rant for the moment. Back to Joseph Stalin.
His first task is to lead troops out into the countryside to procure oil and grain and suppress counter-revolution. Simon Sebag Montefiore is an historian and author of the books Young Stalin and The Court of the Red Tsar.
The Civil War was a time when the Bolshevik Revolution was struggling to survive. It was surrounded and beleaguered on every side by enemies. The only way it was going to survive was by extremism, by terror, by ruthlessness. Stalin was a man who personified all those qualities, and he excelled in the Civil War. He was high-handed, he was brutal, he was obstinate, he was dogmatic, and those were the things that got things done in the Civil War. And in turn, the Civil War formed Stalin.
Russian society is being shaken up. There are unprecedented opportunities for advancement, for those who play their cards right. Each move Stalin makes will be carefully calculated to bolster his reputation. Dr. Martin Macaulay from the University of London is a Russia analyst for the Limehouse Group.
The average person found him very modest, and he didn't speak very loudly. He spoke very simply, very clearly to them, and smiled a lot, very important. And they thought he was a wonderful person because he was so balanced. His comrades fought among themselves, and he stood in the background, sat in the background, and waited for the debate to die down, and then offered a solution, which was in between. So he appeared to be the moderate all the time. He was neither left or right, and he was always a peacemaker. And therefore, for this reason, he rose in the party. What they didn't realize was that Stalin was going to eliminate all of them.
The man who will become Russian dictator, strictly speaking, wasn't even born a Russian. In fact, he's a Georgian, born Joseph Dugashvili in 1878 in the town of Gori, in the wild west of the Russian Empire. Simon Sebag Montefiore.
Stalin grew up in a harsh environment. Georgia was a frontier land filled with tough mountaineers. It was the borderland between the empires, the Persian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Russian Empire. And so Georgians were tough people, and he grew up in a tough town. There were huge fights on all holidays. It's a very macho, honor society.
His father, Bessarion, is a shoemaker. He used to make a decent living. But with an infant son to feed, the family has fallen into abject poverty in recent years. Now, Bessarion is a violent alcoholic. Stalin's mother, Ekaterine, is extremely religious, a devout follower of the Eastern Orthodox Church. Her faith helps her endure regular beatings from her husband. Dr. Michael Lynch is an historian from the University of Leicester.
It was a hard life. Food was not plentiful. Resources in the winter were very sparse. And most of the villagers he lived with would eke out an existence rather than live a good life, which is why they were very religious, which is why Stalin, a young man, paid lip service to religion, prayed, went to church, because that's how you made life bearable.
Neither of the couple's first two children survived their first year of infancy. Young Joseph is their only child. They call him Soso. Professor Donald Rayfield from Queen Mary University of London is author of Stalin and His Hangmen.
Like a lot of very successful dictators, he was an outsider. Like Napoleon, like Hitler, he didn't come from the center, he came from the outside, and he was more of an outsider than any of them, because he wasn't even a Russian. He was a Georgian. He didn't learn the Russian language until he was a schoolboy, and although he learnt it so well that he almost never made grammatical mistakes, he kept his accent to the day he died. In fact, the accent was the most intimidating thing about him, perhaps. So I think that fact that he was a Georgian was a key, because it helped him to pass as a mystery, as someone that people couldn't guess or second guess.
The Djugashvilis are always struggling to stay afloat. They're so poor that over 9 years they have to move between 10 different rented rooms. Derek Henry Flood is an independent journalist, foreign reporter and blogger. He remembers the surprise of visiting Stalin's hometown for the first time.
Gori is not metropolis. It's a small rural area in central Georgia, south of the Caucasus Mountains. It's a place filled with peasantry. It's a simple place. It's pious in Georgian Orthodox Christianity. It's not a place where you would think a world leader would emanate from. So upon visiting Stalin's birthplace in Gori, I couldn't believe what humble means he came from. This is a man that ruled so much of the world for over 3 decades, and he came from what was effectively a hovel. I stood in Stalin's room, and it's hard to believe that great and terrifying power came from such a small place.
As Stalin grows up, his father's drunken violence gets worse. Bessarion is eventually evicted from the city for assaulting a policeman. Ekaterine takes her son and moves into the house of a charitable local priest, a man called Father Christopher Chakviani. It's here that young Soso learns the Russian language. Away from his father, the young boy's confidence grows. Professor Donald Rayfield.
His Georgian background gave him, first of all, an idea of how to conduct yourself with others. That is, not to reveal your thoughts, not to reveal any emotion except anger and indignation, to put your family behind you, not to show affection for your wife or your children, always to appear to be concentrating on the main thing, and to let other people think you were actually stupider than you were. The opposite of what most politicians do. They want to appear cleverer. That was how he deceived so many into thinking that he was not a dangerous enemy, that he could be a useful servant.
There's a mischievous side to Soso's character. He leads a gang of local kids that roams the streets of Gori, getting up to no good. On one occasion, they even set off explosives in a shop. At the age of 12, Soso narrowly escapes death in a freak accident. He's hit by a horse and carriage and is confined to hospital for several months. He'll never fully recover the use of his left arm. When he gets out of hospital, he discovers his absent father has resurfaced. Crazy Besso, as the locals call him, kidnaps his son and takes him to work as his apprentice in the local shoe factory. For the first time, the future communist dictator experiences industrial capitalism up close and personal. The boiling hot factory conditions will leave an indelible mark on his psyche. It takes several local priests to rescue Soso from his father's clutches. Bessarion disappears into the ether once again. Soso returns to school, but even there, Violence is a fact of everyday life. One day, his teachers take the class to witness the public hanging of some local peasant bandits. Educational standards are rather different in the 1880s. Ekaterine is desperate for her son to become a priest. Dedicating him to the divine is the ultimate demonstration of her faith. 50 miles away in the city of Tiflis, there's a school she has her eye on. It's a Russian Orthodox seminary, offering the best education around. The only problem is, only the sons of clergy are allowed to enroll. Luckily, the priest Soso and his mother lodge with, Father Chakbiani, is on hand to have a word with the head of admissions. Freshly enrolled at the seminary, before long, Soso is top of the class. He paints, writes poetry, acts on stage, sings in the local choir. But the boy who will become Stalin is starting to lose his faith in God. An avid reader of books, he's discovered evolution in the works of Charles Darwin. Simon Sebag Montefiore.
While he was at the seminary, Stalin first of all became an atheist, and he became a romantic poet, and his poetry was actually quite good and was published in the literary journals of the day. Then he started to study the works of Marx. And in Marxism, like many other young people at that time in the Russian Empire, he discovered an ideology that wasn't just political. It was a complete world system and worldview that answered all the questions that a young man like this might have, and provided all the solutions that he might ask for.
Stalin's mother may yearn for him to become an Orthodox priest, but he has other ideas. Dr. Martin Macaulay.
He read prohibited books on Marx and other communist writers, and he was punished when he was found out. So if he learned to be deceptive and to say one thing to the priests and think another. So therefore he led, if you like, intellectually a double life from the very beginning. And he could also cheat the lecturers, he could cheat his fellow students. He learned to do that. His goal was always to be number one. Stalin was a clever student. He worked hard, he had a brilliant voice. He always wanted to be number one, and he never conceded he was wrong. He was always right. He had this self-belief, this huge self-belief.
Karl Marx, the German social philosopher and author of the Communist Manifesto, is all the rage in radical European circles. Marx's writings open young Stalin's mind to the possibility of revolution.
When he dropped Christianity and adopted Marxism, he goes from a celestial religion to a secular religion. There are those who are the faithful, Marxists, and those who are outside, the bourgeoisie, the enemy. And the world is divided between friends and enemies. And so this Manichaean view of the world continues, and he retains that to his dying day.
Young Stalin is extremely bright, but increasingly, he's a problem pupil for the teachers. He admits to being an atheist. He refuses to doff his cap to the monks at the seminary. Every now and then, his father, crazy Bessel, reappears, asking for the money his son earns from singing in the choir, pestering him for drink. But he never hangs around for long. Stalin's grades start to slip as he realizes his future lies outside of the church. At night, he attends secret meetings of local Russian workers. Then, at the age of 20, Stalin makes a decisive break with his mother and his upbringing. To Ekaterine's dismay, he abandons the seminary to become a full-time political activist in the Georgian Marxist movement. The organization Stalin has signed up to is illegal. Trying to topple the Tsar is a deadly game. The secret police, the Okhrana, are on the lookout for subversives.
Stalin joined the conspiratorial underground, which he was to exist in for the next sort of 20 years, basically. And the life of an underground conspiratorial Marxist was a very strange one. You changed your name constantly. You moved house constantly. You had very quick love affairs with people and then never saw them again. You had very quick love affairs with people and then never saw them again. You could trust nobody. The Tsarist secret police was gradually infiltrating all these conspiratorial revolutionary parties. And you see, you could trust absolutely nobody. But It was a very exciting life. It was partly clandestine, covert activity. You were agitating
I'm
among
home again.
workers, you were printing out
to find
pamphlets,
somewhere to park
you were
now.
trying to turn other people into double
It's the
agents.
eternal
You were chased
struggle
by the police.
of a person who
Everything in
parks
it was
on the
political,
street
and everything in it
in
forwarded
a
the
neighborhood
cause of
like this
Marxism,
one.
and that's what Stalin cared about.
Full of idealism, Stalin adopts the code name Koba after a Georgian Robin Hood and begins to organize industrial workers to destabilize the Tsarist regime.
Stalin had always followed Lenin's dictum, the worse the better. And that meant the more blood shed, the more suffering, the more misery among the workers, the better for the cause of Marxism and revolution. Stalin cared little for individuals' lives. He was interested in the great movements of history, the dialectical materialism, the struggle, and therefore he cared little if people were killed in riots or actions or bank robberies. He went to Batumi, which was an oil terminus on the Black Sea, and there were thousands of workers worked there, and Stalin immediately arranged a series of strikes.
It is here, in Batumi, that Stalin gets his first real taste for blood. In 1902, his strikers confront the authorities. The police open fire, killing 15 protesters and injuring many more. Stalin is not involved in the actual fighting, but he does tend to the wounded.
This was a sort of massacre, and following the dictum, the worse the better, Stalin was delighted because this was his first revolutionary blooding, if you like. It showed that, he had the Tsarists in effect on the run.
Neither the street violence nor the resulting death toll worry Stalin one bit. In fact, they teach him a lesson he will never forget. Dr. Michael Lynch.
There are suggestions that the strike is like an epiphany for him, that he saw in the act of violence the way forward. This is how you do it. You may be suppressed. It may not succeed as a strike. It may be broken as it was in this instance. People may die. But that is how you change Russia. That's how you progress the revolutionary movement. You can't do it through negotiation, discussion. Propaganda's there, you've got to use that. But physical violence is of the essence. You've got to be prepared to use it. If you're not prepared to use it, cease being a revolutionary. I think that strike occasion convinces him that violence is the necessity that he must adhere to in advancing the cause of revolution.
Physical violence has always been part of Stalin's life. His mother loved him dearly, but beat him severely. On the streets of his hometown of Gori, mounted police used to whip passers-by for the slightest infractions. And of course, his father, Crazy Besso, used to lash him with the belt. Causing trouble on the streets of Georgia, Stalin can't escape the attention of the authorities forever. In July 1903, he gets a huge reality check. He's arrested and sentenced to 3 years of exile in eastern Siberia.